They were born into palaces, but erased like they never existed. Hidden heirs, secret daughters, and royal children locked away from history itself. What Europe's kings and queens did to protect their thrones is darker than anyone imagined. Throughout the glittering halls of Europe's royal palaces, behind golden doors and beneath chandeliers that symbolized power and divine authority, there existed a terrifying secret few dared to whisper aloud. History remembers kings, queens, wars, and grand coronations, but it often forgets the innocent children sacrificed to preserve royal bloodlines and political stability. Across centuries, countless royal children were hidden from the public eye, erased from official records, or imprisoned in remote castles simply because their existence threatened the fragile balance of power. Some were born with illnesses considered shameful for noble families. Others were illegitimate heirs whose birth could ignite civil wars. A few were victims of palace conspiracies so cruel that even royal historians intentionally buried the truth. In an age where monarchy relied heavily on perfection, image, and divine legitimacy, any child who did not fit the ideal was considered dangerous. These children vanished into silence, their portraits destroyed, their names omitted from family trees, and their stories deliberately rewritten. Servants who spoke too much disappeared. Priests were ordered into secrecy. Entire courts participated in carefully crafted lies designed to convince the public that these children never existed. Yet traces of their lives survived, in hidden letters, monastery records, forgotten diaries, and whispered legends passed through generations. Some children spent their entire lives confined to isolated towers, hearing distant celebrations they could never join. Others were secretly sent to convents or foreign territories under false identities. The cruelest part was that many of them were not criminals or traitors, they were simply born inconvenient. Europe's obsession with preserving royal purity created a system where children became pawns sacrificed for crowns and dynasties. Today, historians continue uncovering fragments of these lost lives, revealing that behind Europe's glamorous royal image existed a darker reality filled with fear, secrecy, betrayal, and unimaginable loneliness. The deeper researchers dig into royal archives, the clearer it becomes that many kingdoms were built not only through power and conquest, but also through silence and erased bloodlines that history desperately tried to forget forever. One of the most haunting examples emerged from the royal courts of France, where hidden children often became casualties of political survival. During the reigns of powerful monarchs, illegitimate royal offspring were treated as ticking time bombs capable of triggering rebellion or scandal. Kings frequently fathered children with mistresses, but while some were acknowledged publicly, others disappeared almost immediately after birth. Noble families feared that rival factions might use these secret heirs to challenge succession or blackmail the monarchy. As a result, infants were quietly removed from court and placed under the care of monasteries or trusted aristocrats sworn to lifelong secrecy. In many cases, the mothers themselves were forced into silence through threats, exile, or religious confinement. Historians examining old church documents have discovered baptism records with missing names, suspicious annotations, and falsified identities connected to children believed to have royal blood. Some records simply ended abruptly, as though the child had vanished from existence overnight. There were also rumors of hidden royal sons raised in countryside estates under fake surnames, never told who their real fathers were. These children grew up hearing whispers about their unusual appearance, expensive education, or mysterious protectors, but they rarely learned the full truth. Meanwhile, official royal portraits carefully presented perfect families to the public, reinforcing the illusion of stability and moral superiority. The contrast between public image and private reality was enormous. Behind palace walls, fear controlled every decision. Advisors understood that one secret child could become the center of civil unrest if ambitious nobles chose to exploit them. In some cases, hidden children later attempted to reclaim their identities, only to be branded imposters and silenced by powerful institutions. Their stories became ghost tales buried beneath official history. The tragedy lies not only in their disappearance, but also in the systematic effort to erase every trace of their humanity. Europe's royal dynasties built legacies upon strict control of bloodlines, and whenever a child threatened that control, history itself became a weapon used against them. Perhaps no royal mystery captures this darkness more chillingly than the fate of the so-called princes in the Tower in England. Though their story remains debated by historians, it reflects the terrifying reality faced by royal children trapped inside political warfare. Edward V and his younger brother Richard were heirs to the English throne during one of the most unstable periods in medieval history. After their father's death, the boys were placed inside the Tower of London, supposedly for protection before Edward's coronation. But as political tensions escalated, their uncle Richard seized power and declared the princes illegitimate. Soon after, the boys vanished completely. Witnesses reported seeing them less and less until they disappeared entirely from public view. Rumors spread across England that the children had been murdered to secure the throne. For centuries, historians argued over who was responsible, but the larger horror remained undeniable: two royal children became expendable obstacles in a brutal struggle for power. Their disappearance shocked Europe and fueled endless speculation, conspiracy theories, and rebellion. Some claimed the princes escaped secretly and lived under hidden identities. Others believed their bodies were concealed within palace walls. In the 17th century, skeletons discovered in the tower intensified the mystery, though definitive proof never emerged. What makes their story especially disturbing is how quickly political propaganda transformed innocent children into threats that needed eliminating. Once their legitimacy was questioned, their humanity seemed to disappear in the eyes of powerful adults desperate for control. The tower itself became a symbol of royal fear, a place where heirs could become prisoners overnight. Whether murdered or hidden away, the princes represented a pattern repeated throughout European history. Children born into royalty often faced the greatest danger from their own families. The closer one stood to the throne, the more vulnerable they became. Courts filled with ambition and paranoia turned blood relatives into enemies. The story of the princes in the tower endures because it exposes the terrifying cost of monarchy's obsession with succession, proving that crowns were often protected not through honor, but through silence, disappearance, and the destruction of innocent lives. History never fully recovered. In the shadowed corridors of the Spanish royal court, another horrifying chapter unfolded through the tragic lives of children born into the powerful Habsburg dynasty. Europe admired the Habsburgs for their immense influence, vast territories, and legendary wealth, but behind the grandeur existed generations of suffering caused by extreme inbreeding designed to preserve pure royal bloodlines. Royal marriages were arranged almost exclusively between close relatives, including cousins, uncles, and nieces, creating devastating genetic consequences that many courts desperately tried to hide from the public. Children born with physical deformities, mental disabilities, or severe illnesses were often concealed from society to protect the image of divine royal perfection. Some infants reportedly died under suspicious circumstances shortly after birth, while others spent their lives isolated inside palace rooms far from public view. Servants and physicians were sworn to secrecy, knowing that revealing the truth could destroy dynastic legitimacy. Perhaps the most tragic figure connected to this hidden suffering was King Charles II of Spain, whose severe physical and intellectual disabilities shocked foreign ambassadors. Though Charles himself became king, many less fortunate royal children never appeared in official portraits or public ceremonies at all. Historians studying private correspondence from diplomats described hidden heirs whose existence was rarely acknowledged outside palace walls. Some children could not speak properly, walk independently, or survive beyond childhood due to inherited disorders worsened through generations of royal intermarriage. Yet official court artists continued painting images of strength, beauty, and divine authority, masking the grim reality behind palace doors. These erased children became victims of a system obsessed with blood purity at any cost. Mothers endured terrifying pressure to produce perfect heirs, while fathers feared political humiliation if weaknesses became known. In this environment, children were no longer treated as human beings with emotions and futures, but as symbols of dynastic survival. Any flaw threatened not only family pride but the stability of entire kingdoms. The hidden suffering inside the Habsburg court reveals how Europe's royal obsession with maintaining power slowly poisoned its own bloodlines, creating generations of forgotten children trapped between privilege and unimaginable isolation. Their stories remained buried for centuries because monarchies depended upon illusion, and acknowledging the truth would have shattered the myth of royal superiority forever. Russia's imperial Romanov dynasty also carried secrets involving royal children hidden from history through fear, manipulation, and political desperation. Long before the famous execution of the Romanov family during the Russian Revolution, imperial courts operated within a culture of extreme secrecy where even minor scandals could threaten the empire's fragile stability. In Victorian Europe, especially within Britain's royal circles, another cruel practice emerged involving children considered unfit for royal image or succession. The 19th century celebrated strict ideals of beauty, intelligence, discipline, and moral perfection. Royal families became symbols of national pride, and any child who deviated from society's expectations risked being hidden away from public view. Perhaps the most disturbing examples involved royal relatives born with developmental disabilities or mental health conditions. Historians investigating aristocratic institutions discovered that several children connected to noble and royal bloodlines were secretly placed into asylums or private care homes under false identities. Families often informed the public that these children had died in infancy, even though they remained alive for decades in isolation. One of the most infamous cases involved cousins of the British royal family who were reportedly hidden inside psychiatric institutions and falsely listed as deceased in official genealogical records. These women lived nearly forgotten lives while the monarchy continued presenting itself as strong, stable, and flawless. Their erasure reflected a larger cultural fear surrounding disability during that era. Society believed royal blood represented national strength, so acknowledging mental illness or developmental conditions inside royal families threatened deeply rooted ideas about hereditary superiority. As newspapers gained influence and public fascination with monarchy increased, royal households became even more obsessed with controlling appearances. Children were photographed selectively, public appearances carefully managed, and scandals buried immediately. Behind closed doors, however, many hidden royal children experienced unimaginable emotional suffering. Some were denied education, social interaction, or even contact with siblings. Letters reveal heartbreaking loneliness among those confined to isolated estates or medical institutions for most of their lives. The cruelty extended beyond physical imprisonment. These children were denied identity itself. Official histories ignored them completely, creating the illusion that they never existed. In reality, they remained trapped within systems designed to protect royal reputations at all costs. The Victorian obsession with perfection transformed vulnerable children into shameful secrets. Even family members often accepted the deception because preserving monarchy mattered more than truth or compassion. Modern historians uncovering these erased lives have forced society to confront an uncomfortable reality. Europe's most celebrated royal dynasties often maintained their image through silence, exclusion, and calculated historical manipulation. The grandeur of palaces concealed enormous human tragedy, especially for children who failed to meet the impossible standards imposed by royal tradition and public expectation. In the royal courts of Eastern Europe, especially within the empires of Austria and Prussia, hidden royal children became silent victims of political marriages designed to strengthen alliances rather than create loving families. Young princes and princesses were often married as teenagers to strangers chosen purely for diplomacy, and the pressure to produce flawless heirs began almost immediately. If a child was born weak, deformed, or rumored to be illegitimate, panic spread through the palace faster than wildfire. Advisors feared scandal more than tragedy. In many cases, children were secretly removed from public life before the population even learned they existed. Some vanished into monasteries where monks and nuns were ordered never to reveal their identities. Others were sent to distant estates under the protection of loyal nobles who received money in exchange for silence. What makes these stories especially chilling is the level of planning involved in erasing them from history. Birth announcements disappeared from archives. Court painters altered family portraits to remove children entirely. Official diaries contained missing pages. In certain royal households, servants were forced to swear oaths promising eternal secrecy regarding sensitive matters of blood. Historians studying these erased records discovered strange inconsistencies. Children mentioned briefly in private letters who never appeared again in public documentation. One Austrian archduchess reportedly spent decades believing her younger sibling had died at birth, only to later discover the child had been hidden due to severe disabilities. The emotional cruelty behind such decisions was staggering. Mothers sometimes begged to see their children again but were denied access by royal councils obsessed with preserving dynastic image. Fathers often chose political survival over family loyalty, convincing themselves the sacrifice was necessary for the stability of the empire. These hidden children grew up disconnected from their heritage, hearing fragments of truth but never fully understanding why their existence needed to remain secret. Some became deeply religious after being confined to monasteries, while others reportedly developed bitterness toward the aristocracy that abandoned them. Their lives reveal the darker side of European monarchy rarely shown in glamorous historical dramas. Behind elegant uniforms and golden crowns stood institutions willing to erase innocent children as if they were mistakes in a political calculation. The hidden royal children of Eastern Europe remind us that monarchy was not only about luxury and ceremony, it was also about fear, control, and the terrifying lengths rulers would go to protect power from even their own blood. Perhaps the cruelest fate suffered by hidden royal children was psychological imprisonment, the slow destruction of identity itself. Across Europe, many children who threatened succession or embarrassed noble families were not physically killed, but mentally erased through years of isolation, manipulation, and forced secrecy. Imagine growing up inside a castle without understanding why guards followed your movements, why windows remained locked, or why no one spoke openly about your parents. Some hidden royal children were raised under false names from infancy, told fabricated stories about their origins while servants secretly bowed to them when no outsiders were watching. These children sensed something unusual about their lives but rarely understood the full truth. Diaries uncovered in abandoned estates describe lonely young royals staring from towers at festivals they could never attend, hearing distant cheers meant for siblings publicly acknowledged as heirs. Isolation became a weapon used to weaken their sense of identity until they no longer possessed the confidence to challenge official narratives. In some cases, tutors intentionally limited their education to keep them politically harmless. Others were manipulated into believing they carried curses or divine punishments that made public life impossible. This emotional conditioning often destroyed them long before adulthood. Historians researching forgotten noble estates discovered rooms specifically designed for secluded living, hidden passages used to move unwanted family members unseen, and correspondence discussing children as problems requiring permanent discretion. The language itself revealed shocking dehumanization. Royal children became political risks rather than sons or daughters deserving love. Some hidden heirs reportedly attempted escape, only to be captured and returned under even stricter confinement. Others fell into depression, religious fanaticism, or complete silence after years of isolation. The tragedy extended beyond individual suffering because history itself participated in their destruction. Once official records removed their names, future generations forgot them entirely. Their absence became invisible. Grand museums displayed royal family trees with perfect continuity while the erased children disappeared beneath centuries of propaganda. Yet modern historians continue uncovering evidence proving these forgotten lives existed. Their recovered stories force us to question how many royal legends were built upon carefully constructed lies. The psychological suffering endured by these children may have been even worse than physical imprisonment because they were denied not only freedom, but also identity, memory, and the basic human right to exist openly within their own families. As Europe entered the modern age and monarchies began losing absolute power, royal families became even more desperate to control scandals involving hidden children. Newspapers, photography, and growing public curiosity created a dangerous new challenge for aristocracies built upon secrecy. Suddenly, rumors could spread across entire nations within days. Journalists hunted for evidence of affairs, illegitimate heirs, and palace conspiracies. In response, royal courts developed sophisticated systems of misinformation designed to erase inconvenient children before stories reached the public. Doctors falsified death certificates. Midwives disappeared after attending secret births. Trusted advisors arranged quiet adoptions in distant regions where royal bloodlines could remain hidden forever. Some children were raised believing they belonged to ordinary families while mysterious benefactors financed their education and lifestyle from afar. In France, Austria, Russia, and Italy, whispers circulated about unknown heirs living among common people, unaware of their true ancestry. Certain conspiracy theories became so widespread that governments actively intervened to suppress investigations. Historians examining intelligence archives found evidence that secret police occasionally monitored individuals rumored to possess royal blood. Monarchies feared that hidden descendants could become symbols for revolutionaries or political extremists seeking legitimacy. Even after many European kingdoms weakened, the obsession with preserving dynastic image remained powerful. The public expected royalty to embody stability and moral superiority, so hidden children threatened not only families but national identity itself. One particularly disturbing pattern involved royal daughters born outside approved marriages. Unlike male heirs who could sometimes become political threats, these girls were often erased simply to avoid social embarrassment. Some spent their lives inside convents under strict religious supervision, forbidden from marrying or revealing their backgrounds. Others became companions or servants within aristocratic households that secretly employed them. Imagine the emotional torment of serving relatives who publicly denied your existence. Yet despite enormous efforts to conceal these children, fragments of truth survived through hidden letters, forgotten photographs, and oral traditions passed quietly through generations. Modern DNA analysis has even begun confirming long-dismissed rumors regarding secret royal bloodlines. Each discovery weakens the polished image monarchies spent centuries constructing. Behind the elegance of Europe's royal history lies a landscape filled with abandoned heirs, hidden daughters, and children sacrificed for reputation. Their stories expose how institutions built upon hereditary power often valued image more than humanity, turning innocent lives into casualties of political survival and historical deception. Today, as historians continue uncovering hidden archives and forgotten testimonies, the erased royal children of Europe are slowly returning from the shadows of history. What was once dismissed as rumor or conspiracy increasingly appears supported by letters, medical records, monastery documents, and private diaries hidden for generations. These discoveries reveal that Europe's monarchies were far more fragile, and far more ruthless, than traditional history books admit. Behind magnificent castles and glamorous ceremonies existed constant fear of scandal, fear of weakness, fear of illegitimacy, and fear that a single child could destroy an entire dynasty. Royal families presented themselves as chosen by God, symbols of perfection destined to rule nations. But maintaining that illusion often required terrible sacrifices. Innocent children became prisoners, exiles, or ghosts erased from official memory simply because their existence threatened carefully constructed narratives of power. Some hidden heirs died alone without ever learning their true identities. Others survived long enough to leave behind heartbreaking letters describing isolation, confusion, and longing for families who abandoned them. Their suffering reminds us that monarchy was not merely a world of crowns and luxury, it was also a machine capable of crushing vulnerable lives to preserve authority. The tragedy becomes even darker when we realize how successful these erasures were. For centuries, millions admired royal bloodlines without knowing how many names had been intentionally removed from history. Entire generations grew up believing official family trees were complete when, in reality, they had been edited like political propaganda. Yet history has a strange way of resurfacing. Every newly discovered document, every restored portrait, and every recovered identity challenges the myths built by Europe's ruling dynasties. The hidden royal children are no longer completely silent. Their stories force the modern world to confront uncomfortable truths about power, image, and the cost of preserving legacy. They remind us that the most dangerous place in history was sometimes not the battlefield, but the palace nursery itself. Because in royal courts ruled by paranoia and ambition, being born into privilege could also become a death sentence. And somewhere beneath Europe's ancient castles, forgotten graves and erased names still whisper the secrets kings and queens tried desperately to bury forever.